I would like to throw a little light here on what are the types of sanskars you are capable of. See, all aspects of the higher life, the positive life, has to do with sanskars. That is why the most important part of Vedic education was actually to instill the right sanskars. They will give you this entire, you can say assortment of sanskars available to the human experience. There are sanskars which are born out of vidya, which means what we study, the knowledge we get, what we hear through our senses, whatever exposures we have, and the learning mechanism, they generate a certain level of mental impression. Then what are called kleshas are also generating sanskars in us. Kleshas are afflictions, you can say, which means the negativities of our mind. In Patanjali Yoga Sutras, they are identified as avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh and abhinivesh. So, avidya is the fundamental ignorance of not knowing something. Asmita is the egoism, the I sense. Then rag, attachment, dvesh, hatred or anger. And abhinivesh is irrational fears. So all these they afflict the human mind. And they also are capable of, if repeated, they are capable of generating sanskars along those lines. So then these are called klesha sanskars. The vrittis which generate them are called klishta vrittis. So these are another group of sanskars that we can create. The third group of sanskars is called the bhoga sanskars, which means any experience in life will leave its deep mental impression. There may be good experiences of life. You went to the ocean, you went sailing, you saw the sky, you saw some beautiful art performance, or you did some bhajan, you did sadhana, heard some beautiful instrumental music, whatever you do. Or it can be as simple as you ate an ice cream or you went to a show, you did something. It leaves a mental impression. It is a form of bhog. And any negative kind of bhog sanskar also can be created out of anger, hatred. If you have experienced something, the experience left you angry or in a sense of dissatisfaction, that also impacts the mind, creates a mental impression. So all these come under bhog sanskars. And then you have nirodha sanskars, which means there are times when the mind is relatively empty, free of thought. And consciously, those who practice yoga consciously bring about these states of mind in order to practice deeper meditation. So these sanskars also gather in your mind. They are called nirodha sanskars. Then you see the karma fall of all the past actions. That also generates sanskars in our mind. They are called karmashaya sanskars. Then, of course, the spiritual practice that you do, the sadhana that we do, the good scriptural reading that we do. You are watching YouTube videos constantly. So that also creates impressions in the mind. So that those group of sanskars are called prajna sanskars. They give you prajna, deeper awareness and higher information about the inner life. And then there are bhakti sanskars also. When you practice higher and higher forms of bhakti, then that also produces deep sanskars. So the sanskars, they sort of annul each other. Like the positive sanskars will overcome the negative sanskars in our mind. These things constantly keep happening in the subconscious of our mind. But you must ensure that the sanskars within you are positive. This is the essential part of education actually. If the sanskar within is positive, geared towards positivity, you will not suffer your mind by yourself. The experience of life will definitely be positive. So this is the value of sanskars in human life. If the right sanskars are generated through right habits and right thinking, a proper sattvic lifestyle, then you are safe from within. This contributes in a huge way to emotional intelligence. I want you to see this. In the Western study of emotional intelligence, not enough light has been thrown on sanskar. Individual stray incidents of life and analyzing that, but without going deep into the mental impressions created as a result of your experiences, this will not work. That is why the attention must again fall on this concept of sanskar, At the most, we call it mental impression, but it is something more than that. The actual Sanskrit meaning of sanskar. From sanskar comes sanskriti. Actual culture comes from the sanskar, comes from the deep-rooted mental impression. And culture is more important than mere vritti jnana, more important than mere knowledge. Because, you know why? Vivekananda used to say this. He used to say, knowledge is only skin deep, but culture goes to the very marrows of the bones. So if there are enough cultural standards within you, you will be the one of the most reliable person. If there are enough positively conditioned emotional networks within you, of course your actions, your behavior, your conduct will always be the very epitome of culture you will be. They will always be positive. So this is what they are trying to tell us. So how exactly this sanskar manifests, this we will study with the help of this slide. Look at the slide carefully. There you will see the stages of manifestation of sanskars. See, this is a very, very important thing to understand how exactly our inner mental impressions get converted into action. Look at that first stage, prasupta avastha of the sanskars, is when the sanskar is there. Due to whatever reason, it could be due to kleshas, it could be due to any reason, but it is in a dormant state. It has not yet come into manifestation. You will find this in the lives of children. There, a picture of a tiger has been given. It is as it were just lying down at that time. You are not aware of what is within that. But it is there. The sanskars are there. So this is the prasupta avastha of the sanskars. The second stage is the udara stage, where it comes into manifestation. Like when a person enters youth, so many of the inner sanskars, which were only dormant in the childhood stage, they come into manifestation. They may be positive, there may be some negative sanskars, but a full manifestation of the contents of the subconscious come into manifestation. There may be talents hidden, there may be so much of goodness hidden, there may be very pious sanskars, there may also be very, very uncontrolled and negative sanskars. So this is the udara stage. The third is the vichinna stage. This is the stage where the person becomes aware that he cannot manifest certain sanskars. They are not socially acceptable. So he keeps them hidden. So he keeps them hidden. Like there, why we have put the picture of the tiger is, udara state of the tiger, you know, fully manifested state, when it's totally hungry, how it behaves. Vichinna state is when it sees the guard, how it behaves. So like that, the anger in an uncontrolled youth may be under control by, out of fear of the police, out of fear of the law. So sometimes you see our sanskars remain in this vichinna, hidden state. They are there but not visible. The fourth stage in the manifestation of sanskars is the tanu state, which is an attenuated state, which means by constantly exercising control over the desire and emotion, they have become weak. They may remain hidden and then they can be weakened. So this is the tanu state, because socially acceptable norms require many of our negative sanskars to reach the tanu stage. You cannot manifest or, express anger, hatred, jealousy out in the open. It will not be accepted. So in many people, it enters the vichinna state, and those who purify themselves through sadhana, they gradually attain the tanu state. But if one does not do anything about them, they will remain hidden there in the vichinna state only. So these are all the possible states and stages for the manifestation of sanskars. The next is the niruddha state, where you have overcome and controlled all your sanskars, whatever negativity is there, through positive action, through sadhana, through japa, through the name of the Lord, through karma yoga, through good living, quality living, and through good interpersonal relationships. By doing all this, you have controlled and overcome the negative emotions. So this is there in the Bhagavad Gita, Vishaya Vinivartante Niraharasya Dehinaha. If you don't feed it enough, the senses will, withdraw, as it were. They won't rush towards sense objects because there is self-control in that person. So this is the Niruddha state, very common among sadhaks and yogis. But this also, you see, the seeds of the sanskars are still there. Just that they are under check, they are under control, and he is trying to transform them, that energy, into something else, into bhakti, into jnana, but they are not yet completely got rid of. The seeds of the sanskars are still there in the Niruddha avastha, but there's one last stage called Dagdha Bija avastha, where the seeds of these sanskars themselves are burnt out, which means a complete purification, so that the seeds cannot germinate anymore. Dagdha Bija itself means the state of the burnt seed. So it cannot germinate anymore. And this is indicated by the verse, Rasavarjam Rasopyasya Param Drishtva Nivartate in the Bhagavad Gita, which means the very taste for sense objects goes, how Param Drishtva, by getting a vision of the ultimate, by getting a vision of God, the very taste for sense objects, the seed of the sanskar of bhog goes. It is removed. So all yogis aim at this Dagdha Bija avastha. Without this, see, Vivekananda says this, without yoga, knowledge does not come. Unless the mind has reached this state of utter purity and perfection, how will it reflect the light of the self? How will it reflect the complete consciousness, you can say the blossoming of consciousness which we are, happens only when the mind reaches this state of utter purity. So this is the state which all sadhaks aim at, the Dagdha Bija avastha state. But those who are not yogis usually are moving between the Prasupta, Udara, Vichinna and Tanu states. And that is why this entire different study of the different stages of manifestation of sanskars is very important, not only for modern society, but for our inner life, for the culture of our inner life, and also so that this comes into general knowledge that how exactly our inner life pours out into the outer. If there is no culture in the inner life, how do you expect to bring culture into the outer life? You cannot do it by force, and it cannot be done by, just thinking about it. The culture should come from within. So that is why all this information about sanskars. One example I can give you from the Ramayana is the story of Mother Kaikeyi. You all know the story of the Ramayana very well, so I will go straight into its implications. See, Mother Kaikeyi loved Sri Ram very much as her own son, even more than Bharat she loved him. But deep within her, there was the seed of this Putra Moha. And of course, the story goes that Mother Saraswati wanted that the gods should have Sri Ram go to the forest. They wanted that because he had to kill Ravan, he had to do all those things, and that is why they made her say such things. But for whatever reason, psychologically, if you try to study it, Mother Kaikeyi had this deep Putra Moha, the deep attachment to her own son Bharat, due to which when the time came for the coronation of Sri Ram as the Yuvraj, she at once listened to the words of Manthara. Manthara was after all only a maid. She need not have listened to her, but she listened to her words, got affected by them, and that inner seed of that sanskar of Putra Moha came out, and she begged the king that Sri Ram should be sent to the forest for 14 years and my son Bharat should be made the king. I want these boons from you. So you see how the sanskars manifest. When the right conditions prevail in the outer world, the sanskars come into manifestation. That is why you see the most important thing to do is to try to change our inner state. You cannot always change outer circumstances, but one thing we can definitely work on changing is our inner life. If that is changed, the circumstances will arrange themselves according to your inner world. So in this Kaikeyi's case, the outer circumstances impinged upon her and drove her to this conclusion because she had the sanskar already within her, her great love for her own son, and it just put aside the love she had for Sri Ram. And then what took place, you know that very well. So this is how the sanskars manifest. The Ramayana is indeed a huge, you can say, lesson for the refinement of human sanskars and human emotional intelligence. It is actually the best manual for that. Really, Rama Rameti Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Ramanama Vranane. It is an absorptive text. The very name of Sri Ram brings about that absorption. And Sahasranama Tattulyam Ramanama Vranane, which means it is of great blessing. It is the name of Sri Ram itself, and the charit, the life of Sri Ram, is the greatest blessing to mankind. It is teaching us these very valuable lessons. If you pass through the conditioning of the Ramayana, you don't need to learn any more about cultural values, because you see, values cannot actually be taught, they can be caught. When you substantiate and concentrate on the right ideals. So this is what the Ramayana serves for us. And let us remember another important point about emotional intelligence. It is that, you know, even your emotions are part of the Triguna theory, which means they are tinged by sattva, rajas and tamas. For most people, emotion means rajas and tamas only. The emotions are of that category. But that emotion can be made sattvic. That emotion can be transformed into something else. When Kaikeyi actually realizes the harm she has done due to the greatness of Bharat, her own son, when he completely denies the kingdom and tells her repeatedly that she has done great harm not just to the family but to the people, to send away a person like Sri Ram to the forest. She has really massacred the very traditions of Raghukul. When he tells her this, because it came from such a noble mind, the transformation happens in her mind instantly, and she is able to go back and acknowledge that she did wrong. She is able to do that. So you see, the emotions are again, you know, in the gunas, and they can be either rajasic or tamasic. The same emotion which was tamasic and rajasic, if you extract it from that mold and train it to become sattvic, it will come with that tremendous energy. Her love for Sri Ram came back. She had gone into tamas, she came back into the state of right thinking, and she was able to, at least she was able to ask forgiveness for all that she had done. So you see, the emotions also have work under the power of these gunas. This Triguna theory is a huge thing in yoga psychology. What it tells you is, it is not enough to just identify an emotion one by one. You can actually categorize emotions as sattvic, rajasic and tamasic. And the tamas aspect of these emotions can be removed by gradually training your emotions. Which means what? There is no cause for depression. Life, you see, in the nature of energy is you can transform it from one level to another. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be transformed from one type of energy into another type of energy. So the tamasic energy in an emotion can be transformed. It can be made sattvic through right living standards and of course sattvic habits and all that. Now here I would like to give you the example, the most steady example of steady devotion and love. Lord Hanuman. Look at his emotion towards Sri Ram. That itself ennobled his life. It made him Mahavir. He was absorbed in the thought of Sri Ram from a very young age. And he knew the perfect man, the embodiment of perfection on this earth, was his Prabhu Sri Ram. And the absolute devotion which he had towards him transformed him completely. And that is why he became what he became. The transforming power of emotion. This is what I want you to see there. Wherever there is this Ekanishtha Bhakti towards an ideal, it is the highest level of emotional intelligence. That is why he is called Jnaninam Agraganyam. His entire body, mind, thought, everything went out of his devotion to Sri Ram. It went into the service of Sri Ram. And Sri Ram compares him with Bharat. That is why. In the Hanuman Chalisa you have this. He compares him with Bharat. You are verily like Bharat to me, he says. Now, all these are exemplars of the highest level of emotional intelligence. Another beautiful example is Mother Sita herself. She was, of course, the epitome of all virtue right from the beginning. But even in very trying circumstances, to show this level of very stable love and devotion to the highest ideal, no matter what happened to her, this itself is the parakashta, the very, you can say, highest level of emotional intelligence. So this inner stability, which keeps you so committed to higher values, this itself is the sign of the highest emotional intelligence. If we concentrate on these characters, Sri Ram, Lakshman, Mother Kausalya, Mother Sita, and Hanumanji, it will automatically generate emotional intelligence within you. Just concentration on these great beings, because they showed that level of emotional maturity, intelligence, and of course they were divine beings. Mother Sita actually radiated the Devi Bhav. The Devi Bhav is the Bhav of a goddess. She was Mother Lakshmi herself in that form. So always the highest ideal she has shown in every aspect of life. Vivekananda used to say and insist that the worship of Sri Ram, Mother Sita and Hanumanji must come into every Indian home. He used to say great good will come to the country as a result of that. Because these ideals are like that. They portray the highest values of human life naturally and spontaneously in their own lives. When we concentrate on them, our lives also rise to that level, naturally. So this is the highest level of emotional intelligence possible in the human life. In our own culture, we have these magnificent ideas. To the extent we are able to draw from them. That is why we worship them, so that that value comes into our life. If you know whom to worship and how to worship, the value will enter into your life. And that is why we have these great spiritual ideas. Spirituality and culture are deeply related. The highest cultural values become spiritual. So that we call that to be spiritual, which comes from this kind of a source, a deeply cultural source. So when we are able to relate with this, we will naturally ennoble our emotions, change our emotions. I give you this challenge. If you read Ramayana for 2 years, either Tulsi Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana, any Ramayana, just 2 years, your emotional life will be transformed and your emotional intelligence will build up. That is why in the past our grandmothers told us that this Parayanam has to be done. This has to be done on an everyday basis. They themselves would do it so that the mind remains on the positive, on the good and the great, and not just on breaking news and what is coming from outside all the time, impinging on your mind. Daily exposure to these sattvic things will make the mind sattvic, and emotional intelligence blooms forth in a sattvic mind. So with this, we will move into the next video, which will exclusively be on bhakti and emotional intelligence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.